All right, major action in the free agency markets continuing to own headlines around MLB and NFL. It's March movement, baby, and DraftKings contributors Garion, Thorne, and Nick Friar are here for a rock-solid March movement segment. One, I'm sure that they've read correctly, unlike Julian Edlow in the last segment, which was kind of an important one because March Madness starts today. All right, so you two breaking down the latest moves with free agent frenzy overlapping really for the first time between these two leagues, these two sports. Watson watch. The mood is tense. I have been on some serious reports, but nothing quite like this. Deshaun Watson reportedly torn between the Browns, Saints, Panthers, and Falcons. Prediction time, Gare Bear. Which team will he choose and why?
So I think he's probably going to want to stay out of the AFC. I think the AFC is pretty stacked right now. There's a reason that 3 of these teams we're talking about reside in the NFC South. It's just far more open in that conference. So
Garion,
can probably, yep.
Let me cut you off. The Browns, as we are talking right now, Adam Schefter tweeting, the Browns have been eliminated from the conversation. So now we're looking at just the NFC South, I guess.
Genius.
So all I'm hearing is that my validity as an analyst is spot on.
Yeah, baby.
So maybe he'll keep eliminating them as I get to my answer here. I think it's going to be the Saints. And it sounds weird to say that they are the team with the most organizational stability because, they just lost – in the last 2 seasons, they've lost Drew Brees and Sean Payton. But I think as a team, as an ownership group, they are really like one of the best examples of an NFL organization the last 15 years. So if you're Deshaun Watson and you had to play for the Texans for the first 5 years of your career, do you really want to go to the Panthers or the Falcons? I mean, I was going to say Browns in there too, but now we know he doesn't want to go to the Browns. But I think that really accentuates the point here. I think he wants to find a stable situation, and I think the Saints are the most stable of those situations. Do they have some question marks with their wide receiving core? Sure. But I think Deshaun Watson, especially if that rumor about like Teron Armstead is kind of waiting in the wings, he's going to re-sign with the Saints if they get Deshaun Watson. If that's true, if they're like a package deal,
yeah,
I think that really pushes this home for the Saints.
And you know what, Gary? There's been reports over the past few days that multiple players, free agents right now, are kind of sitting back, waiting to see what his decision is because they want to play with Deshaun Watson. And Nick, you have reports now the Saints have restructured like contracts with multiple players to clear substantial salary cap space, which would pave the way for Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, and I think we saw that he got his second meeting with the Saints just recently, might have been the other day. I was kind of surprised when I see the Panthers and the Falcons pop up on this because Gary was kind of saying those are 2 teams where it's like, do you really want to go after what you've been dealing with in Houston? You want to go play there? And then the same thing with Cleveland, too, for that matter. The Saints make the most sense for me. I think Gary highlighted well from an organizational standpoint. And then I know there are some issues in terms of depth, but still, he's going to get to play alongside Alvin Kamara. I think that's going to make a huge difference for him when you have a playmaker like that you can kind of lean on in different ways throughout the course of the season. And if we get other free agents that are going to decide, you know what, I want to go play for New Orleans because Deshaun Watson's there, I think they're in a really good spot to sign him, to acquire him if moving forward.
I think Jeff Ulrich is the only dude on this planet who thought that Atlanta would be like the best fit for him when there is no one there, nothing there. Jeff's only argument was, well, he's from the Atlanta area. Turns out New Orleans isn't too far from that. One thing Atlanta did win, guys, that Julio Jones trade. Dude was cut by the Titans after just one injury-plagued season in Tennessee. It'll save the team almost $10 million in cap space. Question is, how much does he have left in the tank? So which teams could be a good fit for him, Nick?
Yeah, I would think at this stage in his career, the only thing that he really has left to do is go and chase a ring. And I would understand that at this point in your career. I know some guys don't want to do that after a while. You want to win with the guys you played with forever, but still, that's not an option for Julio Jones. So I would think with the loss of Odell Beckham Jr., that if the Rams, why not go and take a flyer on this guy if they can work out the numbers in the correct way for him that fit. I think that makes a lot of sense. I know I saw the Raiders pop up a little bit on this, and that would be kind of like a random Raiders move, I feel like, too, where I don't think anybody takes them seriously, but they take themselves more seriously than they really are. They do need the help. I mean, it's just Renfro and Waller out there right now. And I know, being in New England, people want to throw out the Patriots out there. Yeah, sure, it could work. I don't know how much it's really going to help them, but they haven't done a whole heck of a lot this offseason. So it wouldn't surprise me if they went and decided at random they're going to go with Julio Jones. But I think the best fit for him right now is out in LA with the Rams.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, the Raiders are got to do what they can to keep up with the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Broncos in that division arms race. Garion, What are your thoughts on like Green Bay? I know Jarvis Landry kind of been rumored there because Green Bay the past few years really lacking that number 2.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of funny that Nick brought up Odell Beckham Jr. because I think he's a really good sort of template for what we're probably looking at in like the quote unquote Julio Jones sweepstakes. I'm not sure he deserves to have a sweepstakes anymore, but it is what it is. It's kind of just that list, the list we've had for maybe the last 18 months of when a quote unquote star receiver becomes available, what are the teams that are maybe looking to invest in that position? And it tends to just be the Patriots, the Ravens, the Packers, the Rams. I do think you could throw the Raiders into that category because, they are a team that, as Nick was saying, lacks wide receiver depth. There's an arms race going on right now in the AFC West, but I could definitely see the Ravens hopping in there and taking a stab at someone like Julio Jones. I think you could probably predict a scenario where, Davante Adams wants a second guy there. I know he was trying to recruit Odell last season. But even the Saints, like we just talked about the Saints, like if this is a situation where they get Deshaun Watson, maybe they try to acquire Julio Jones and really bolster their receiving core for their new quarterback. So I think that group of like 6-7 teams is probably the front runners for Julio's services. And, look, he's played 19 games the last 2 seasons. It's kind of strange because his like number 1 asset as like a fantasy asset was that he was always playing in those peak seasons. And now it doesn't seem like he's going to have that health. But if he can be the number 2 or 2.5 wide receiver on a really good team, I think that's probably his best scenario right now.
Yeah, we know that Dallas could use a veteran option for their number 3 receiver. We also know that the Cowboys and Jerry Jones, they love pursuing big names, but we also know the Dodgers love doing the same thing. So let's go to the diamond here because Freddie Freeman, guys, signing with LA for 6 years, $162 million, according to reports. So Freeman joining an already stacked lineup. Yeah, it's dangerous. It's sick. It's nasty. It should be illegal and should be hitting right in the heart of that lineup. Was this the best case scenario for Freeman's fantasy value, Garion?
I think you could make a case that him signing with any number of the AL East teams he was linked to, just because of ballpark factors, might have been like the best case scenario. But the funny thing is, he really didn't have a bad scenario. I mean, you look at the teams he was linked to, there are 5 teams currently projected to be scoring over 5 runs per game. Obviously, the Dodgers are one of those teams, but that group also includes the Red Sox, the Rays, and the Jays. Like, he really couldn't have gone to a place where you'd go, oh, not great for Freddie's value. I do think the one interesting thing to note about the Dodgers specifically is this is a team that last year, you go through their positional player game logs. Only one guy had over 600 plate appearances. They were definitely a team that maybe like to utilize that 10-day IL a little bit to get some rest in. They do have some veteran guys. But, they just had the depth to give dudes days off. I think the fact that the National League has the DH slot now, and you can kind of give half days off without taking someone fully out of the lineup, it makes me a little bit more optimistic that Freeman's going to be closer to like the 650 plate appearances mark than he would the 600 plate appearances mark with a Dodgers team that might be able to coast through the entirety of September.
Okay, let's go to you, Nick. How do you feel he fits there? Is this going to be good for his fantasy value?
Yeah, I would think so. This is, I will say though, it's disappointing just because the Dodgers continue to spend money. They've turned into the West Coast Yankees. I know, I said it the other day, but it's a little disappointing. But also they're not winning, right? If they're not winning titles, so it's not really going to hurt too many people other than maybe the Giants and the Padres. But I do think you look at this lineup and it's ridiculous. Who are pitchers going to pitch around in this lineup? You have Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Trey Turner, Muncy when he's healthy, Cody Bellinger if he gets things together back completely again, Justin Turner, Will Smith. I don't know if I just said Trey Turner already too, but I'll say him again twice. That's fine. Chris Taylor, AJ Pollock. This lineup is a joke. So from a day-to-day standpoint, yeah, Garion makes a great point that the Dodgers are going to go and rest guys here and there. It makes a lot of sense. Why wouldn't you when you have this kind of depth too? Because I think they still have Gavin Lux in all this as well. So yeah, why not give them rest? But day-to-day, yeah, I would think you're going to have to get at least a piece of this lineup day in and day out because there's going to be so many run production opportunities.
All right, guys, we got 3 more baseball topics to hit on here, so let's pick up the pace so we can get to them all. Third baseman, defensive wizard Matt Chapman, traded from Oakland to Gare Bears, Blue Jays. Yankees, though, still the favorite to win the AL East by a small margin on the DK Sportsbook, but should they be, Garion? Like, why not Toronto after this offseason?
I think there's two ways to look at their 2021, which is they got a little unlucky in the sense that they were a 99 Pythagorean win team. They should have probably had 8 more wins than they actually had in the regular season. However, they also had Marcus Semien, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and Bo Bichette only miss a combined 4 games. So can Bo Bichette and Vlad continue to be that healthy is really a big thing. Matt Chapman obviously helps in a number of ways. Like you said, a defensive wizard at third base. The border stuff really helps the Jays as well. I mean, it's a weird situation.
Yeah.
The fact that unvaccinated players can't travel to Toronto. We still haven't figured out what exactly is going on with the New York City mandate. That could be a huge Aaron Judge issue. Like right now, he's penciled in to play 72 games this season. It's crazy. That probably gets resolved, but that's on the table right now. I will say, though, in conversations like this, maybe just bet the Rays at plus 300 because that seems to be the bet to make at all times.
All right, Nick, talk to me here. I don't think the question's about his defense. The question is what he can bring to the lineup with Chapman.
Yeah, I think you're going to see some high team run totals throughout the course of the season. You have to. I mean, between Vladdy, Bo, Springer, Teoscar Hernandez, and now Chapman, you got Guriel as well too. I mean, I think the one thing with Chapman that I'm most interested in seeing over the course of the season is how his average trends. I know we talk about more of the ancillary numbers, but this is a guy who was hitting a little bit better for average over the last couple seasons, taking quite a dip. I know the Jays isn't necessarily as hitter-friendly as ballpark as maybe Yankee Stadium is or Camden Yards, but this is a big improvement from the Coliseum, so his power numbers are still going to go up for sure. Still going to be a guy you're going to want to consider rostering day in and day out, but I think Garion makes a great point when you're talking about who's going to win the East. I still think you got to look at the Rays first just because they just know how to get it done no matter what talent they have there.
I mean, it's crazy. You're going to possibly see unvaccinated visiting players aren't even going to be able to play in Toronto. And as Garion mentioned, who knows if unvaccinated home players are going to be able to suit up for the Yankees. Let's get to our last one here, guys. As we all predicted, Kris Bryant signs a huge 7-year, $182 million contract with the Rockies. Colorado finally gets a third baseman. They've never, ever had a good one. Wait a minute. They traded away Nolan Arenado just last year because they wouldn't give him a similar contract. The franchise is absolutely perplexing everyone on the planet. Make sense of this for me, Garion.
You can't. I mean, I guess an organization may be thinking that they could, win the PR battle by signing a big player and people would get off their back. But, as everyone's pointed out, this makes no sense when you basically paid the St. Louis Cardinals $50 million to take Nolan Arenado 2 seasons ago. So I can see maybe why Bryant is doing this. I mean, he's a guy who already has his World Series ring. He already has his MVP. Go out to Colorado for 8 seasons or 7 seasons and just hit 35 home runs a year. Really pad those counting stats, man. Get that Hall of Fame case going. But I don't know. Like, this makes absolutely no sense. Bryant will probably be traded before the end of this contract. It's just ridiculous. And I will say, too, Bryant actually had a really, I don't want to say bad, but like average final 4 months of the season. It's probably fixed by going to Colorado, but there are some definite concerns there.
All right, go ahead, Nick. Try to make sense of it.
You cannot make sense of this whatsoever. This is. I mean, honestly, if I'm Nolan Arenado, I'd be personally offended by this move. I mean, like you talk about going and signing another star player to win the PR battle. Sign a guy who plays a different position. You sign a guy who's his replacement, and like Garion said, you paid half his contract or whatever it was to send Nolan Arenado away, and what he did for the franchise and how they were pretty good when he was there too. So I would be pretty upset. But then again, you're with the Cardinals now; they're always a contender no matter what every season. So how mad can you really be if you're Arenado? One thing the Rockies is like a contender in the division. And everything. I mean, come on, what was it, like plus 10,000 or whatever? Yeah. Probably got worse when they added Bryant. But I would look at Bryant's home run totals on DraftKings Sportsbook when those go live because that'll be an interesting prop over the course of the season.